if I could have a motion, please, to approve the minutes.
Second?
Okay. You have that, Rachel?
Yes.
Ron, would you like to give the state update, please, on our legislative action?
Yes, ma'am. Let me start off with, just from kind of a timing standpoint, kind of where we are. So session ended on May the 8th. It was supposed to end on May the 5th. The budget wasn't done in a timely fashion, so they had to wait 72 hours, which took them to May the 8th. Just from a budget standpoint, there's a lot of misinformation in the media right now. The governor does not have the budget. A lot of people think like the governor has the budget and like vetoes are going to be coming out any day. The governor does not have the budget at this point. Once he receives the budget, he has 14 days to act. We believe he's going to get the budget probably sometime right after Memorial Day. So, that would give him until the first part of June to potentially make vetoes. From our agenda standpoint, let me just start off with one issue that was not on our agenda. We spent a lot of time making sure it did not impact us, which is T-BARTA. It was a bill this year that basically reorganized T-BARTA, and what it did is, number one, it shrunk the footprint down from 7 counties down to 5 counties. It changed the complexion of the board, changed the appointments on the board of directors, and then also it changed instead of the Regional Transportation Authority, it's not the Transit Authority, so it changed its name. It did not touch funding, didn't talk about projects, but the one thing that it did do is from a kind of a core mission standpoint is, prior to the session, the only thing in statute that T-BARTA was required to do statutorily was produce basically a 5-year work plan, which then would go on a shelf somewhere and was not used. What the legislation now does is this premium transit study that's currently being done by DOT, hopefully it's going to give a project, whatever that project is that DOT recognizes as the #1 project from a transit standpoint, that will be something that T-BARTA is going to kind of work on in the future. I will tell you, again, funding was not touched in the T-BARTA bill. I know we've had lots of calls about this, with Commissioner Long and with Brad and the team. Next year, I think you're going to see funding as a component of this. So how does this impact PSTA? We're on the board. One thing we wanted to make sure of was that if they're going to change the board of directors, that PSTA had a seat on the board of directors, which we're able to do, number one. Number two is it does not impact, and we believe the way the legislation is written, and it will not impact in the future any of the projects that we work on, our footprint from from Pinellas County standpoint for PSTA. I think the one thing that there was a lot of discussion from legislators on was that a transit authority that represents a county is critically important to a regional transportation system, because if you're moving people from point A to point B, once they get to point B, they need to move, and the regional transit systems are going to be hopefully that system that's going to move them. So I was asked earlier, the governor does not have the T-BARTA legislation yet. We believe he actually will probably get it sometime this week. We fully anticipate that he's going to sign that legislation, and they're actually working on doing some type of a ceremonial bill signing down here in the Tampa Bay area. So once we know the date of that, we'll obviously make sure that all of you know, that we'll make sure that you're invited to attend that as well. Any questions on T-BARTA?
I've got a couple minutes. When I think the legislation says that the appointments will be made in 45
days.
45 days.
So the new board takes effect on July the 1st. We're hoping that once the legislation is actually signed, it's going to take some time for the counties potentially to reappoint people. There's 5 counties now that are part of the footprint. The only ones that were left off were Sarasota and Citrus County are no longer part of the board, but the counties will have the opportunity to reappoint. But more importantly, the governor gets to reappoint the chair, but the governor only appoints the chair one time. After that, the chair will be elected by the board of directors. So we're hoping by July or August timeframe, all the appointments will be made by that point. the governor's office sometimes slow on making those appointments. So I think we're going to have people from the Tampa Bay community kind of encouraging him to get these appointments made, because there's some things they have to do prior to January 1. One of the things that the legislation requires them to do is go back and look at basically their current operating structure, committees and other things, citizen advisory councils are currently using today, and make a recommendation back to the legislature by January 1 on kind of a new structure from a committee structure as well, in case additional legislation is required to make those changes.
So my question would be to you, assuming the governor follows the path that you're describing, a mid-June signing, would it be necessary or appropriate for the PSTA board to vote on its appointment to the TBARTA board at the June
I think
20,
I think that'd
whatever
be
meeting, or the July meeting?
And I would do that if the bills has been signed by our June 20th meeting, which it will have been, I would encourage you to do it at your June 20th board meeting.
Okay. Okay.
The second question I had, or I'd like you to comment on, is in order for the PSTA board to be as supportive as we possibly can of whatever effort or initiatives will be underway next legislative session to provide funding or react to the study or whatever. As you mentioned to me, the legislative session for 2018 starts in January. Committees start in September. What would be your suggestion on how this legislative committee and then the PSTA board can, start discussions, I guess, this summer, or put something on, get ready for next September, to make sure that we are supportive of having the best TBARTA we can possibly have?
Sure. So I think number one, we need to figure out, meeting with, Rachel Monte was here earlier this morning, meet with TBARTA, meet with the Tampa Bay Partnership, who's been very involved in this. I think Commissioner Long's actually meeting with them sometime in early June, is let's have a conversation with them about what is your plan. I know one of the things they want to do next year is look, if you change the structure of the organizations, that's fantastic, but to really make them an organization that's going to be effective, you have to give them some type of a recurring revenue source. And I think right now that's still kind of up in the air what that revenue source would look like. I think there'll be a lot of discussions over the next couple of months on what that would look like. I think we got to do our homework between June and July. Either A, it's something we can include on our legislative agenda, which I'll talk about the timing of that in a second, or B, because again, TBARTA was not on our agenda this year.
Right.
But we were very involved in that issue, making sure it did not have an impact on us. So again, it could be something that's not on the agenda, or if it's the pleasure of this committee and the board, we can actually have it on the agenda for next year as well.
Ron, I think, and shame on me because I forgot to discuss it with Ray when we were sitting here, and I told your staff to let you know we were here in case you wanted to come up. To figure out what is the amount of money that we need to try to siphon off for them to get them through to when potentially there'd be funding coming from the state or maybe even the feds.
And that's a conversation we need to have with TBARTA to make sure from an operating standpoint, how much money they need from a recurring standpoint. But I think being more importantly, if you start talking public-private partnerships, if you start talking about looking at some type of a project that they can be involved in the next 2 to 3 years, how does that potentially factor into funding as well? So from an operating standpoint, yes, we need to look at how much recurring revenue they need to be successful, but also what potential projects are on the horizon as well.
Okay, but you were talking about specifically like the bridge funding until they get to.
I'm really just in the moment because we're finalizing our county budget right now, and of course TBARTA is in there for their share. Which I was totally going to oppose, but now I have to rethink it given where we are. So having some number to plug in there for this year is really critical, and I just totally, and you know what? I don't think I have Ray's cell phone number, so maybe you can give it to me, Ron, if you have it.
I'll give it to you after the meeting,
I
for
need
sure.
it, so I can call him and ask him that. I'm really ashamed of myself. But that's really gonna be very important so that we can carry them over, because otherwise I don't know where they get it, right?
Right now, basically, the only recurring revenue source they get is, they get some from the MPOs, which is on a voluntary basis.
And, well, ours is too,
And-
and the van pool.
In the van pool out of Hernando, in Pasco County, that's it.
Which I've been advocating for the transit agencies to take over the van pool.
I think that the van pool amount is like $1 million a year.
I thought it was 3.
3 million?
I think so.
I don't know. It's not state funding, it's more, I think.
It's federal.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's 3, Brad.
Oh,
We better check into that.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the list got changed a couple of times, but what did it end up being? 4, 4, and 4? Who will be appointed?
So there'll be, there's a total of 13 board members. There's 1 county commissioner from each of the counties, which is 5. You have the 2 mayors from the largest cities, which are going to be the city of Tampa and St. Petersburg. PSTA and Hart, which is 9. And then 4 of folks from the governor's office, which are supposed to be more like business and industry, non-elected officials.
They're non-elected. Okay.
But you've got, and that was a lot of discussion in Tallahassee about making sure that the majority of the board would be elected officials versus non-elected. So if you look at the 9 appointments, depending on who our appointment is, 8 of the 9 are most likely going to be an elected official. So most likely 8 of the 13 would be elected officials versus, which is not much different from the day the governor has 4 appointments today, and most of those are business and industry representatives, not elected officials. Let me move on to funding. The expansion of the Causeway Bridge, PD&E was one of our top priorities. We were able to get $1 million. Thank you to Senator Jack LaValla, who was able to do that for us. The $1 million is critically important because we need to update the PD&E. Once we get the PD&E updated, we believe at that point that will get the opportunity to be in the not only on the MPO list, but more importantly within the DOT work plan. And I had a conversation with the governor's office at the meeting last week, saying, look, we know the way the process works. Typically, the governor's office frowns upon transportation projects getting funded outside of the normal process, out of the DOT work plan. But kind of when I walked them through why we did it this way and getting the updated PD&E, I think they seem to understand that. Senator LaValla has committed to us that he's making this one of his top priorities with the governor's office. So if the governor does do vetoes, which obviously we believe they will, hopefully this project will make it through the veto process. Number 2 was transportation disadvantage funding. So as you all know, last session, the legislature commissioned a study that was going to be done by Cutter. Cutter did that study, gave it back to the legislature, and basically, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, they looked at basically 3 kind of formulas. They looked beyond that, but the 3 they kind of published in the report was 3 different formulas. They went with formula number 1, which didn't have a huge impact on us. I mean, at the end of the day, we make probably a little bit more money, but not a ton more. It hurts Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade gets almost $2 million less. I think some folks from Miami-Dade have some concerns with that. I was surprised, and I think a lot of other people were surprised. There was a push very late in the budget process to keep the formula the same as this year and make no changes to it, kind of review it again over the summer, then come back with session starting early next year in January, during the 2018 session, look at this. They ended up using the language that was recommended out of the Cutter study. They actually put that in as proviso language, which is good because it means it's only there for 1 year. And then what they did is in the implementing bill, they actually put language in that would require the agency for persons with disabilities to do another study next year. And now the good news is
It's good.
PSTA has been included as having a seat on this group that's going to do the study, which is good. We believe, and I think Alan may be on the phone now, we believe, we haven't confirmed this, but we're pretty sure this came from Miami-Dade. We think some folks from Miami-Dade are the ones that ended up putting this language into the implementing bill. We'll obviously make sure that we're engaged in this, make sure that once we kind of know who at APD is the one heading this up, we'll get Brad in contact with them to make sure that with PSD having a seat on there, we want to make sure that we're involved early on and know when the meetings are and make sure that we're active on this issue going into the 2018 session.
Alan, are you on the phone?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I jumped in right at the beginning when you were approving the minutes, but
Sorry.
and just to add to what Ron said, I spoke with the staff director in the Senate last week, and she was out of the office, but was going to get back to the office late last week or today, go back through her notes and double check everything and let us know. But she felt like, to Ron's point, that she remembered this was coming from Miami-Dade as kind of an avenue to take it out of the of Cutter's hands and try to get something that might be a little more independent than the product that the legislature got. So at least that's what she thought she remembered, but she was going to go double check everything and then let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, of course, this is a new state agency that, I mean, I personally don't have much involvement with yet. I think, Patty, you told me more than everything I know about it.
Well, and Brad, what was interesting about this
So
is
what-
it literally came out on day 59 or day 60 of session when they were having all the implementing and conforming bills kind of pop out. This was new language. This was not in the original implementing bill. So this was something that was added pretty late in the process.
Well, it's good that PSTA was named
Yeah.
for that. So we'll, if we can get the contact people who are working on the study.
Yep, we'll get that for you for sure.
Yeah.
So, the one project we were unsuccessful in getting on the budget, we've had a lot of conversations about, I've already talked with Brad and the team, is the direct route from TIA to Clearwater Beach. Meeting with Senator Brandis and meeting with Senator Latvala, specifically Senator Brandis, they said, look, let's make the PD&E for the Causeway Bridge expansion our #1 priority. They had questions about the ridership, they had some questions about the need, so we told them we would go back and look at that, look at making more potentially a pilot for next year, working with DOT, going into the 2018-2019 budget to be able to get that done. So that's something we're going to have to go back and include for next session. But getting the $1 million for the PD&E for the expansion of the bridge, which is critically important, by the way, because the two of them are kind of tied together. If you get the direct route from Clearwater Beach out to TIA, you have to get them there over the bridge. And so hopefully by doing the PD&E first to make our job and trying to get the additional funding next year for the operation of the direct route a little bit easier.
So Ron, would it be helpful to get some data from the hoteliers on Clearwater Beach about how many of their guests are coming in from outside the area and would have had to use the airport? Because I'm chair in the TDC this year, so that might be information we could pretty easily get.
I think any data that we can get to kind of prove our point that people are actually taking buses from TIA to get out to the beach, I think would be helpful to us.
Is there any way for you to capture that, Brad? Do you know?
I mean, we can contact the hotels and see about if they do have that data on number of their, or percentage, or whatever, number of their guests that are coming from the airport. What the data that we already collected, that we provided right before the session started, the legislative session started, was comparable services that both exist today down in Fort Myers and in Miami-Dade. Both of them have an airport express that goes from the airport to the beach in Fort Myers, and one in Miami-Dade, and both have are successful. You know, and I can't remember exactly, but both carry more than 100,000 riders a year to and from their beach hotels. You know, and in one case, Miami Beach is a little bit larger than Clearwater Beach, but Fort Myers is smaller, and they've both been very successful. So we could put together some more data on, and maybe contact the TDC. Maybe they've got that data.
I'm gonna
the
ask
airport.
because just about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago, there were 144 folks from Germany that came in to TIA, and they all came over by bus to the Sheraton Sand Key on Clearwater Beach. And then they went all around the county visiting the highlights. They were in downtown St. Pete, they were in Clearwater, and it was a pretty amazing experience to listen to them talk about their experience here.
Wow.
And that happens all the time with these big groups coming in. Just FYI. Yes,
I have a question. Do I not remember that when the Tampa airport got a new CEO or whatever, he was here telling us how much he wanted to be a part of making sure that the transportation between the airport and here, do I
he's
not
been,
remember that?
yeah.
Oh,
he-
yeah.
he
We
did.
have pictures of that.
And he came to the county commission, he was very supportive, the airport was, of this project last session.
Yeah, and he went to the Bay Area Legislative Delegation, or his the Tampa International Airport Senate representative who spoke in support on behalf of this this project.
I just
Actually,
don't know.
multiple routes: St. Pete, Clearwater Beach, Tampa.
I don't know if those quotes would be good in supporting this and pushing it and,
Yeah, I mean, the issue is this is a harder lift for, I understand, than for the legislature, certainly, in that this is operating assistance that we need for this project. We don't really need, we would contract this out so that we wouldn't need the capital. And so it's a multi-year funding commitment. And, you know, the legislature doesn't really do that.
I understand that, but
The DOT might do it, is the thing.
I think that his speeches and words and what he needs and what he has could be very
Oh, yeah, I agree.
uplifting to this project. I
Well,
think it's important.
we gotta get past his audit first. He's kind of crosshairs with a few members of the Senate.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Good point.
Two other things I'd mention from an agenda standpoint is, number one, what was not on our agenda that impacts a partnership we have is with Uber. TNC statewide legislation did pass this year, which is important to make sure that for not only Pinellas County, but the entire Tampa Bay region, there's now a set of standards that's in place from an insurance standpoint, background check standpoint, that if you're gonna have a TNC operate, there's state standards basically that TNCs have to follow. The reason I mention that is there was actually some things trying to be done late in the process with the Uber bill that potentially could have impacted some of our partnerships we currently have. Not directly, but maybe moving forward would impacted pilots. So for example, let's say we want to do some type of a driverless car pilot in the future. That would, the legislation, some of the amendments that were being proposed would have impacted a pilot for us in the future. So we made sure that that did not pass, and Uber was definitely making sure that didn't pass as well, because they wanted to, pilots are critically important to them to make sure that, like if you're doing first mile, last mile pilots, or like the driverless car technology, which, by the way, is not that far off into the future. I mean, it's already being tested in other parts of the country. They're coming to Florida sooner than later.
They're running a pilot project in downtown Tampa. Brad?
So they want, and I think one of the places they may look at in the future is Pinellas County. So we want to make sure
Brad.
that PSTA's.
Jump on that.
And we've already had a conversation with Senator Brandis about that.
Right? Why is it
Just-
Well, the Tampa one is not like they're smaller cars. They're like almost like the smart cars, not like not the bigger cars that they're using.
All right, but
And then
did I not hear that they have one that's a minibus?
And I think part of
They're trying to
they're
launch
trying-
trying to launch an autonomous shuttle bus thing, just on the downtown corridor later. They say later this year. We'll see.
We'll see.
But-
We've already talked to Senator Brandis about kind of a broader pilot than that Uber wants to do something in the Tampa Bay area. We want to make sure that PST is at the front of that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So-
Right?
Let's see, let me end with, the timing of the 2018 session. So the session's right around the corner. 2018 session starts early in January. So because of that, committee weeks will probably start in September. I've already had conversations with Brad and Commissioner Long about, we're gonna have a meeting with Brad and his team in probably the latter part of June, start talking about our listed agenda for 2018. We'd like to bring something back to this committee in July, potentially bring back something to the board in August. And with committee weeks going in September, I'd like to have something approved by the committee weeks in September, so we can kind of hit the ground running. So,
We're on
again, June, we meet with staff, come up with something to bring back to you all. July, maybe latter part of July, we can meet as a committee, approve that, and take it to the full board in August. And one final thing, you and I talked about this on a conference call. So there is a constitutional amendment that's being placed on the ballot
Yikes.
for additional ad valorem exemption for homeowners.
No,
And-
no.
So that was,
It's happening.
that was a part of the budget kind of negotiations that went on. I'll leave out kind of the gory details, but, one of the things they talked about, they kind of bundled everything together was, not only some budget-related issues, some policy that was put into conforming bills, but this was really important to the House, and the Senate did pass it. Now what they did is they changed it slightly from our last conversation is, the additional exemption would be on 100,000 to 125, which helps local governments in a little bit, not a lot, but it does help local governments a little bit. So this constitutional amendment would be on the ballot in 2018, and I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it takes effect the middle of 2019.
So I have an ingenious idea. Alan, are you listening?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
How about we get the legislature to repeal it,
To repeal,
what they passed this session? They can say they realized their horrible mistake.
I'll let you have the very first conversation with Richard Corcoran about that, and then we'll.
Well, you know what?
Yes.
I'll come in, but I swear I'll come in right behind you, right after you're done.
Okay, well, I wouldn't mind having that conversation. I have an awful lot of data that I'm just absolutely certain he is not aware of.
One question that some
Okay.
board members have asked me is, will it take a 51% vote?
60%.
60%.
Right.
Okay.
It passes.
Took that.
If it's on the ballot, it passes.
Yeah.
I think
I-
that he realizes it, the data that you have, I think it's been brought to him, but I think that he doesn't care. He has an agenda, and that's what's gonna happen.
Well, Janet, the one thing I think local governments are gonna have to really do at the city and the county level is, if you have less ad valorem dollars to spend, there's only one or two things you can do at that point. You can either cut services, which I don't think most of you are gonna wanna do, or you're gonna have to raise revenue somewhere else. So if I'm a taxpayer and I get a $400 break on whatever it comes out to be, $500 or $600 for, as a homeowner, but then you're turning around and either I have to pay additional county or city taxes somewhere else to make up that difference. This can be a wash, and I think a lot of local governments are probably going to do that.
Except a lot of local governments are very close to their cap, and they don't have that luxury of just raise taxes and
Yeah.
raise taxes. And I'm I mean,
Including the transit special districts like PSTA and Hart, who are both at our cap.
with the right messaging, Ron, I mean, it's not a tax cut. It's really a tax shift. And the people that can least afford to pay it are the ones that are gonna end up bearing the brunt. And the folks that Senator Brandis is worried about, because he said, I'm all about helping the poor and the, forgot what the other, what?
I don't know.
Needy.
Not needy, there was another word he used. And I'll do that all day long, but it's those very folks that will first feel the effects of what they have done. So he's very misguided. Did I not tell him?
Yes, I was sitting right next to her.
Okay,
And so was a whole room of chamber members.
Well, okay, so anyways, on that, are you finished on that
Yes, ma'am.
horrible note? All right, we have to move on because we're gonna run out of time.
Okay, I just have one
Very
thing.
quickly, Patty, because we still have the federal report.
Okay. Larry Ahern, who is running to join you,
Uh-huh.
suggested at the very meeting we were at that what the cities should consider doing is shutting down the parks.
Yeah, well, we all know what his mental capacity.
Whatever it is,
Harry.
that was the,
Harry, are you ready, honey? Harry?
Harry, are you on the phone?
Harry may have stepped
Oh,
away. This is Steve
Steve.
Palmer. I'm on as well.
Oh, hi.
Hey, I'm here.
Okay, all right, well, okay, listen, before we listen to you give your report, I just want to say thank you very, very much on behalf of everyone else here for the new congressional directory. I'm very, very pleased to receive it. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Commissioner Long, it's Bill Johnson. I'm just on one, let you know I'm on the phone too.
hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill. Good morning.
Hi.
Okay, so, Harry, go forth and give your report, or Steve, or whoever is prepared.
Sure. So I guess the big federal news for this week is the president's budget comes out tomorrow officially.
Uh-huh.
There have been a variety of leaked versions of that point, but, and we've already discussed, I think, at length, the president's skinny budget that provided severe cuts to the FTA and the capital grant programs, which would impact your BRT project. We're not sure what the final budget that comes out tomorrow will say, and we will give, Steve and Shannon will provide you all with an update as soon as it comes out tomorrow, I'm sure. Fingers are crossed, we don't know, but just, I guess our admonition would be that this is only the president's budget. Congress has the final say on what funding will provide for the FTA, the Department of Transportation, and so that process will kick off. The other thing I would say is we're already 3.5 months behind schedule in the appropriations process. Normally, the federal budget president comes out the first week in February. We're already into the next to last week in May, so they're 3.5 months behind really kicking off the appropriations process, which is going to make it impossible for them to finish by October 1st. So there'll most certainly be a continuing resolution for some period of time, at least through the end of the year or into early next year. So that's a problem. Steve, I don't know, you want to add anything on the budget request?
So I can only add some speculation, and none of it's good news, and we'll confirm all of this tomorrow, but there was a leaked document last week that reportedly had the Trump budget in it, line-by-line appropriations. And just to give you a heads up, no surprise here, because we knew this was coming as a result of the skinny budget. But the president's budget allegedly will propose to zero out the Tiger program. And again, as Harry said, Congress, is going to do its own thing when it comes to this budget, and they love the Senate loves the Tiger program. So as they did this year, they're likely to restore that money. And then the Trump budget also proposes that there'll be no new small starts or new starts or core capacity projects. Again, we saw that in the FY 2017 budget, Congress rejected that idea. So it's going to be a challenge. We have to fight our way back, and then we're just going to, we'll confirm all this tomorrow, but the message for everyone is that we're going to have to be very diligent and fight hard to make sure Congress understands the importance of the program for PSTA.
So Steve, two things. Are you still hearing from the members, like when we were in Washington about a month ago, that the president's budget was dead on arrival?
Yes, ma'am. That even the Senate Majority Leader has said pretty much the same thing.
Excellent. And with what you have both reported just now, what happened to the big infrastructure package that we were going to get? Is that all going to the Saudis?
No, that if I can, I'll segue into the second thing we wanted to talk about today, and that is Secretary Elaine Chao testified last week in front of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. So they weren't focused on transit as much as they were just the big infrastructure picture. And this appears to be the latest information that about the infrastructure initiative. She said that the White House will release principles for what this infrastructure initiative will be this month. That could be as early as tomorrow with the budget. We're anticipating it could be a part of the budget proposal tomorrow. And if you recall what the president proposed on tax reform, they issued a one-page statement, a one-page list of principles. So we're not expecting a lot of detail, but it'll be something we'll have this month. And then she said in the third quarter of the year, so meaning up through the fall, they will release the White House will issue a legislative proposal. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of detail until late summer, early fall on the infrastructure initiative. Congress, in response, has said they're putting together their own thoughts and ideas and legislation, but I don't think until the White House issues its proposal, the Congress will be able to do much with it. She did also say that there will not be projects listed in it. So there will not be earmarks, there will not be designated projects. It's just going to be a broad, allegedly a $200 billion in new spending, and then new federal spending, and then with the expectation that will then leverage another $800 billion in private sector funding. That's how they get to the $1 trillion.
Excellent. Or not.
And Steve, this is right. I think I read somewhere that she, maybe in response to some questions by senators, she said that the cut in Tiger funding could be replaced by this this infrastructure money or something like that.
Yes, yeah, I think you're exactly right, Brad. I don't think that they want to play up the fact that they're cutting a program, the Tiger program, which is very popular in Congress. So they're basically trying to downplay that by saying, yeah, we're cutting that, but we're hopeful that this other, our infrastructure initiative will really provide better, more focused funding.
Okay,
Lisa,
well,
you have any points you'd like to make? Nothing? Patty?
I know what you're
If
thinking.
there are enough questions on that, I'll just...
It's like the federal funding and all of the other funding we're using for exactly what we're supposed to, and now we're getting crunched on it.
yeah.
Well, and maybe, Harry, if you want to talk about the BRT project, that might actually kind of segue into, what exactly PSTA is doing that's right in terms of trying to leverage its own investment for the federal funds.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, I think, commissioners and Brad, but, I assume you're still pursuing or moving ahead with the BRT. You have, I think, a deadline to get all your final paperwork into the FTA by August to be considered for the next budget round in fiscal 19. So, as Steve said, and I think Commissioners Long and Gerard were with Chairman Mario Diaz-Balart, who indicated that the committee was going to continue to support these capital programs. So that our expectation is keep moving forward, because, our hope is that there will be a Small Start, New Start program next year, and that funds will be available, hopefully, for the BRT project. Brad, I don't know, what is the schedule? How are you guys doing on the BRT package?
Well, I was going to report that we are moving forward successfully. Commissioner Barkley and I just had a really good presentation with Heather to the South Pasadena City Commission, and they are going to write a letter of support or vote on a resolution of support for the project. We've had a number of meetings with the St. Pete City Council, and we completed a round of public workshops last week that were very
positive. So we're on schedule to get our package to FTA by the end of August, and just anything that hopefully I can work with you, Harry, and Steve on developing another. I know we've done a lot already. We've written letters, and I've written letters, and we went to DC, but it's so important, I think, and it seems like this BRT project is so well supported here locally that I would like us to come up with what else can we do to ensure that this funding is not cut and this project is shelved. It just feels like I want to make a recommendation to the PSTA board that we're doing everything we possibly can.
Well, Brad, let us when the budget comes out tomorrow, when we can confirm where the budget proposal is. Let us come back to you with some suggestions. I mean, the good news is what you just said is exactly the most important thing, and that is there's such strong local support for the project. Our job now is just to make sure that working with the other transit the agencies around the country, we communicate to the Congress how important this program is, so they understand they need to restore the funding for it. So it's not about the individual PSTA project, it's really more about the federal program and getting that funding restored.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, one other thing that you heard and the commissioners heard when we saw Chairman Diaz-Balart, there is a key step that has to happen here to move the next budget forward, and that's that sequestration is still in play in the federal budget process, and Congress is going to have to make a decision here in the next couple of weeks or the next few months on whether they're going to lift the budget caps or not. If they don't lift the budget caps, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, the discretionary spending in the Congress, which is what the appropriators deal with, will have to be reduced by $5 billion in fiscal 18 unless Congress takes some action to raise the caps. This is what Chairman Diaz-Balart referred to in our meeting, that any help that the association, the members of your board can do to convince members of Congress to raise those caps. That's really important because if Congress had reduced the overall spending numbers by $5 billion below this year, that's going to be tough. Half of that will fall on defense, and half of that would fall on non-defense programs. Much of the program coming out of transportation. So, did I get that one right there, Steve?
Yes, you did. And I'll only add the hard part about what we're talking about, Harry and I are talking about, is that this is going to be a fight. I know it's at the end of May, but we're going to have to be fighting this until October, November, because sequestration, the debt limit, the budget, the fiscal 2018 budget, they're really not going to be finalized until fall. So it's a prolonged effort that we're going to have to go through this year.
We're ready to
Brad,
support you, however.
Brad, you have a letter coming from the association, is that correct, on that issue?
Yeah. I know we, yes, the Florida Transit Association, I'm pretty sure I'll find out where we are on that, but we've got signatures from all 35 transit agencies in the state of Florida. I'm not sure if that letter has gone out yet, but I'll find out. Yeah.
Is this the one you're referring to?
No, that's a different one.
Oh.
Yeah, well, if there's another trip to DC or a strategically timed one for the fall, or if there's other letters we should be writing, I just want to make sure that we can say we've done everything we can.
Absolutely. Yep. We will help you with that.
Yep. The other thing is, Steve was going to give you an update. The secretary is actually, despite what you're reading about other agencies, the Department of Transportation is rounding out its staff. They're getting people, high-level folks on board. So if you do want to come up for some meetings, correct, Steve? I mean, we can work with you on the right meetings.
That's correct. We don't need to list names, but the secretary has a person now in the front office who's handling transit issues and who's advising her in addition to FTA. We don't know when there's going to be an FTA administrator named or if there's going to be one, but at least there are some political appointees now that we know that we can go talk to.
Great. Well, thank you
Some
all
of these
very,
are folks who
very
worked
much.
on. Some of these are folks who worked on the Hill and are now moving over to the department, which is good. Steve and I have relationships with some of these folks, and so I think there are good opportunities to. It might be worth coming up and making another pitch about the project before you submit the final paperwork in August.
Oh, yeah.
Are they there in July?
Well, the staff.
Yeah.
Congress is here all of June and all of July except for the 4th of July week. That's the only week that they're not in session between now and then they're gone all of August. Congress will be out of session the entire month of August.
We better get there before then.
Yeah, but you're also suggesting that we try to meet with the folks who are going to review our project. The employees.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to make sure they have all the answers that they need and everything they feel comfortable before you submit the final package. Make sure there's not something they're looking for that you're leaving out.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there somebody that we should be talking to, Harry, that we didn't get to when we were up there last time?
President.
I think we hit the right people. I think you hit Senator Rubio, who's a new member of the Appropriations Committee, and I think that's helpful. And I think we can go back and see Mario Diaz-Balart, just make sure and maybe touch up our Florida appropriators, Tom Rooney and Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, some of those folks who are from Florida and making decisions about what's going to be funded in the Department of Transportation budget. But I think you did a good round. We just should go back once we have the budget information here and go back and remind them of the importance of these capital programs.
Yeah, we
And I'll add-
didn't see Rooney and Wasserman Schultz the last time we were there.
No, we should do that.
Yeah.
Commissioner, I'll just add real quickly too, that the nice thing about coming up again later this summer or before the August recess would be to meet with not only these political appointees at DOT, but also the Office of Management Budget. Because we're looking at our project will hopefully be in the budget they submit a year from now. We want them to be well aware of what our project is so that when they get it from FTA, hopefully they will just look at it and go, oh yeah, I know about that. That's a good project.
Yeah. Not, where's Pinellas County again? Which is what they do. Okay, well,
Hey, Brad, one other question. Your Lono application, we want to generate letters of support for what you're doing. Do you have a summary or something you can give us? We can help start drafting a letter and getting some letters put together to Congress.
yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. We do have a summary of that, and we'll get you. I'll send that up to you hopefully today. I'll go down and get it from them. Commissioner, if you're okay, Harry and Steve, I included a copy of. We drafted a letter to Congressman Rooney supporting his concept of restoring earmarks to Congress. That is in the legislative packet, or it might be newly in the legislative packet. But I'll make sure you have a copy of it. But if Harry, if you want to quickly just describe to the committee what this Congressman Rooney's idea is and how it might apply to transportation projects in the future, that might be good. You do that better than me.
Sure. So you may be aware that last November, after the elections, the Republicans were meeting for their reorganizational session. And every 2 years when they reorganize, they take a look at the rules of the House. There's currently a Republican rule in the House that bans congressionally earmarked projects. That has been in effect since 2011, so there have been no congressional earmarks in the appropriations process. So a couple of members of Congress, including Congressman Rooney, offered an amendment to the House rules last November to bring back the earmark, revive the earmark process and try and find a way to make it more transparent, but allow members of Congress to have a say in how some of these funds were spent in their districts. It was apparent at that time that amendment might actually pass. It was a closed session of the Republican conference. The Speaker asked the members, including Congressman Rooney, to withdraw the amendment because they wanted more time to work on it, and promised at that time that they would bring back that amendment and allow the Congress to consider it in the first quarter of this year, which would have run through the end of March. He then said, how about giving us through the first half of the year, which would have been through June 30th. He's since come back and said, how about the first 3 quarters of the year through the end of September to give us time to look at it. So he's tasked the House Rules Committee with looking at making recommendations to the House on whether they should bring back the earmark process, and if so, what would that look like? What would that process be? The Rules Committee has spent quite a bit of time. In fact, our folks at our firm have helped provide them with some historical information on how earmarks worked in the past and how the process has evolved over time. And the Rules Committee is getting ready to hold a series of hearings on the earmarks, looking at what happened in the past and how they could potentially be brought back in the future. Congressman Rooney has since introduced his a bill to bring back the earmarks just on a limited basis for the Army Corps of Engineers and Bureau of Reclamation, just on a narrow basis. But he's trying to be a leader in this whole debate. So he was looking for letters of support from Florida associations to talk about the importance of these earmarked congressional projects and why members of Congress understand what the needs of their communities are. So he asked for letters. I think the National Association, or the Florida Association of Counties is working on one. I know the Florida Ports Council has already sent one. The Florida Beach Organization is sending one. And so I talked to Brad about having at PTA, the Florida Public Transit Association, send one. Congressman Rooney is just trying to show support from the communities for what they're trying to do. And in all likelihood, if they bring back earmarks, it'll initially be for projects related to communities and nonprofits. They'll probably not bring them back initially, I don't think, for public corporations, but they would look at nonprofits and state and local organizations. So, Brad, that letter would be helpful, I think, to Congressman Rooney. He will at some point be testifying before the Rules Committee. I think he'd like to take those letters with him to the Rules Committee to show the statewide support for what he's trying to do. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Steve, you want to add anything to that debate?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it. Thank you.
Well, Harry, we've got the letter right here ready to go. I don't know if you've gotten a copy of it, but we can get that to him.
I just tried to email, I think I emailed it to you.
Okay, look in your email, Harry. And the question I wanted to ask you is, would it be helpful if our county commission sent a letter of support as well?
Sure, I think that'd be great.
So I'll take this one and we'll just plagiarize a little bit of it, you know, but change it to fit our,
Just a little bit.
well, you know, we'll change it. You know what I mean. Take that back. Erase that, Rachel. I didn't say it.
Hey, Commissioner, we're happy to help you with that too. If we can, we're happy to take a cut at that. If you know, I can work with Mary Scott and Greg, and we can get you something for the county that might be read a little differently than the PSTA letter.
Yeah, well, maybe Mary Scott can put her good brain around it and help us out.
Sure.
Would you ask her, please?
We will do that.
Terrific. Thank you so much. All right. Patricia has something to add. How about
Would
Pinellas
you
Park?
would you like to add letters from each of the cities
Or the county covers.
that actually belong to PSTA?
Well, the county covers.
Well, Harry, you were saying that
The county.
you thought that Congressman Rooney may be hesitant to open up earmarks to governmental organizations.
I don't think he's hesitant to do that. I think his bill was simply to focus on the Corps of Engineers just because he wanted to bring, his thinking was if you couldn't bring them back for everybody, at least maybe start on a small scale, demonstrate how the process is now even more transparent than it was before, and demonstrate that Congress can do it responsibly, and then broaden it out. So he's not opposed.
Okay.
He's not opposed to bringing them back for all the appropriations bills. I think he just decided that he was trying to figure out strategically how to do it. I think the Rules Committee is looking at a broader reform of the earmark process well beyond just the Corps of Engineers. So I think letters of support would be helpful.
So, Harry, I've been talking with Austin Durer from Congressman Chris' office almost daily this past week, and while we've been in this meeting, he's called me again. I'm working with him to try to craft, a message for the Army Corps on our beach renourishment projects. So maybe that's something that you could ask Mary Scott to highlight in our letter from the county. That'd be perfectly appropriate. And on another point, just for messaging, our county has an enormous Health and Human Services Department which pours millions of dollars into social services that, oh, by the way, Ron, are the state's responsibility, but they have shifted that down to us. And so, to that point, Neighborly Senior Services has indicated that the elderly population in our county are fast becoming the most #1 priority in terms of need, because they are lacking roof over their heads and one solid meal a day. And in order to take care of 10% of that population, it would cost $150 million. So wrap your head around that and figure out how we stay up at night worrying about stuff.
And the cuts that are being implemented are affecting neighborly cares enormously.
Right, and that's why I was asking for a letter from each city.
Yeah.
St. Petersburg is sitting here, Lisa, Pinellas Park, all of these other cities are duplicating out of our budget what the county divvies up. St. Pete does, Pinellas Park does, all of us are trying to support all of our people that are in need. It is the elderly, the handicapped, and the
little
children.
kids.
The little kids,
And the
right.
mentally ill. There's an article in today's paper about that. So that's what I'm talking about with Speaker Corcoran, Ron. I mean, these are big, serious issues that they have forced on the back of local government since 2008. It has just been year after year after year. And at some point, can you just imagine what the quality of life would be like if all of a sudden we said, okay, that's how you want to play? Watch this. And then we just stopped doing it.
We can't stop doing it.
But it'd be pretty tragic,
It
right?
would be traumatic, but
yeah.
none of us can do that.
So to hear him say, and I apologize for straying away from your piece, Harry, but to hear him say that we are irresponsible and unaccountable is a big, tough pill to swallow. Okay, thank you for allowing me to share. I'll stop now. Anything to wrap up, Harry and Steve?
I think we covered it.
Okay, well, for the good of the order, anything here that we need to cover, Brad, that we haven't already articulated in some manner, shape, or form? We've insulted everybody this week.
You do it well, though.
Hey, thank you guys so much for allowing us to vent and share our opinions. And thank you for all your help and for all the good work you do. And thank you, Ron, for being here in the real flesh and blood. It's so nice to see you.
It's good to be here. Not in Tallahassee.
Okay, and I don't have a gavel here,
Two
but.
quick things for you,
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Number one is, you have listed here, your next meeting is June 12th at 1 o'clock. This is obviously up to Brad and you as chair, but would you maybe not want to meet in June, allow us to meet in June as a staff to come back with recommendations for you in July? I'm not sure how much you'd have to discuss in June. Maybe the budget would be done by then, but,
Well, how about this? How about we leave it on our calendar for now?
okay.
And let's wait and see what happens with the governor and maybe the potential of a legislative session that might give us lots to think about on June 12th.
That's perfect. And then the other question would be is, not for this board meeting, which is in a couple of days, but at the June board meeting, would you want us to come to your June board meeting and give a presentation to the full board, kind of a illustrative update of what happened post-session? By then, I would hope, I mean, depending what the governor does with the budget, obviously, by your June board meeting, you may have a better idea. I wouldn't want to show up this week and give an update because it's not done yet, I'd prefer to show up at your June board meeting if that's appropriate.
I think it's very appropriate. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, no, I think that would be great.
Do you think
Um,
you'll have anything to report by then, Harry?
Well, we'll certainly know what the budget request is, and we'll certainly know, you're talking about the July meeting, is that correct?
No, June.
June 28th. Oh, no, June,
June 12th.
No.
No, the actual board.
June
meeting.
28th is the board meeting.
So we'll keep June 12th on the calendar in case we need it. But we'll be prepared to do a actual legislative update, state legislative update to the full board. And I'm not sure if it's appropriate to have Harry and the team come in at the same time or not, so.
Do we want to play that by ear, Harry, and you let us know? Because I think the full board probably needs to be updated as well. What do you think, Lisa?
Yes, I think it too. June 28th would work.
Harry?
Sure, I mean, we can do that, and let's see what the budget comes out tomorrow. We'll talk to Brad and stay in touch, and we can at least give an update on what's the budget situation, what's the situation with the PRT application, and might have some news on infrastructure, not sure yet. We'll know a little bit more this month.
So,
Okay, and I promise when you come for the full board meeting, I will behave. Oh, silence on the other end.
I think June 12th, would it be likely or a guarantee that the governor will sign the T-BARTA bill by June 12th?
I would think so, yes. I'm not sure if the ceremony of bill signing will be done by then, but I think by June 12th, the actual bill should probably be signed by then, yes.
I mean, one thing, if we don't need a legislative committee, we could turn it into a nominating committee to nominate the T-BARTA appointee. Maybe, I don't know.
Mayor Carson is so
Yes, he is.
They made one change
And he
there as
cannot
well.
remind him, he cannot,
There's no designee anymore.
there's a designate somebody like he's so famous for doing.
He can't?
No, he cannot.
They removed that. They
He
basically
is-
said if the mayor's gonna serve, the mayor has to serve. There's no designee.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is important. Not
Well,
that they all.
when I heard that, I was
Do we
like,
have
I
another
can't
nominating?
tell Jen.
We don't
You
have
know,
a
'cause I was
different-
like, I was happy.
I don't see
have
it
one
nominating,
scheduled.
so.
I'll be happy.
We don't need, I mean, we
Yeah.
don't.
I mean, because I
He's
think,
gonna show.
isn't Patty on the nominating committee too? Yeah. So-
We can't just like change it to.
No, I
we
know,
have to
we have to be.
Poll the other members.
Okay, without further ado then, if we're done, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Very
Chair.
important. Please make sure you don't take your eye off the ball. Thank you, everybody, for being on the phone.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Okay.
Commissioner, you're meeting with the Tampa Bay Partnership sometime soon?
Yes, I have a meeting with Rick on. so
And I
did
think what we should do, by the way, is once we have a better idea of what the partnership doesn't know what they want to